Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today, and welcome to today's bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's bonus, shall we? All right, folks, so two people that I have interviewed and became friends with on this channel eventually ended up having a meeting. They ended up meeting up. And one saved the other, and that would be Victor saving Luke. I'll never forget the day. Luke was talking about how they were having an issue with the Dogman in Taylor, Mississippi. And shortly thereafter, Victor said, "Send me the coordinates." And a day later, I received a phone call. And while I was on the phone with Luke, I heard gunfire, and I heard the excitement in Luke's voice as he was saying, "There is green laser lights in my backyard and gunfire going on. I think he's here, or his team is here." And that was kind of a marking point for me and Victor. You know, it really solidified who he was. And then he, of course, in the very beginning, when Luke and I first met, talked about Victor had actually talked about Luke's granddad being found in the barn. And there was just a lot of very interesting things around Luke's experiences that Victor knew a lot about. And pretty interesting. But this is kind of an upload involving both of those guys. So first, let me start off by saying our property is only a few acres in Taylor, Mississippi, and we've had the property for 50 years, I believe. My grandfather at the time was a handyman doing odd jobs for people and working at the town's grocery store. At the time, my grandfather George was 22, and he would get up at 4 a.m. and walk 2 to 3 miles to work each day because he didn't own a vehicle. He did this every day for 3 years. Then he met my grandmother, and they started dating, so when he would get off work, he would head to her house, which was 1 mile the opposite direction of his. Like any other day, he would leave her house 2 hours before it got dark. As he would head home, he would cut through a trail that would cut his trip by half. One evening, he was heading home, cutting through this trail he took many times before. He was about a mile into the woods, and he felt something was off, like he was being watched. So as he is walking, he heard something in the distance moving. He stopped. It would stop. As it's getting dark, he has no type of light other than some matches, so he started to rip a piece of his shirt off and put some dry leaves into it, and tied it to a nice-sized stick. Then he took some tree sap and applied it to it as well. While this was going on, the sound of something approaching got louder, as it was only a few yards away, and it was almost completely dark. He would attempt to light his makeshift torch, down to his last 4 matches. As darkness fell upon him, he was able to light his torch, and it began to blaze and light up the area around him. Standing 20 feet from him was a monster standing 8 feet tall with a head 3 times the size of any wolf known to man, mouth overcrowded with teeth, arms long past the knees, backwards bent legs, dark gray color, pissed off looking like my grandfather had wronged it, and it was gonna rip him to shreds with evil intent. He stood there looking at the demon, fingers over exaggerated 3-inch nails. Then it let out this horrific growl as saliva dripped from its mouth, as if it had rabies. It charged at him, taking a swipe. He was able to get out of its way and press the torch to its side, burning it badly, and its fur catching on fire. It screamed in pain, and it sounded like a woman being butchered and a dog. He took off running for 30 minutes, lungs burning, breathing labored. He had a 1/4 of a mile to go, and he wasn't going to make it, and his torch was almost out. He was able to extend the longevity of the torch as he was resting, trying to catch his breath. A few minutes went by as he heard this roar in the distance and the creature bulldozing its way towards him. He takes off, running for his life, and sees his house in the distance. The creature is closing its gap. He accepts the fact that he was about to die, tears pouring down his face. He yelled for his dad with everything he had before he collapsed from exhaustion. He came to, finding himself in his house. His father was in the kitchen at the window that was facing the woods. His hunting rifle was always at the door. When he heard his son, he saw a light and a body on the ground and a massive animal less than 15 yards away, closing in. Without thinking, he grabbed his rifle, firing 2 shots, shattering the window at the creature, hitting it in the shoulder, quickly chambering another round and hitting it in the chest, causing it to flee back into the woods. That first encounter was the start of many more. So after all of that happened to my grandfather, his dad never saw the creature in detail to know what it was. His father started dropping him off to work and picking him up until he was able to fix an old car that had been sitting around. As the days went on, he only saw that creature one more time, sitting on a ridge, which was a ways out. After that, he didn't see the thing for months. Went back to his regular life and ended up marrying his girlfriend at the time, later on having a son, my dad. 6 months after my dad was born, strange things started happening around the house, which was built on the same property. Tapping on the bedroom window, doorknobs being tested, things like that. It would happen on a nightly basis. So one night he stayed up and waited for the anomalies to happen, which it did. As it was tapping on the window, he snuck out on the side of the house to flank what was making the sound. To his surprise, it was that creature from that night a couple of years ago, with a scar on its side from being burned. The creature didn't see him yet, so he raised his rifle and chambered around. As he did that, the creature quickly turned and took off as he was firing shots at it. Only focused on the one that took off, he didn't see the one that was creeping up on him until it was almost too late. Baffled, "There's 2 of them," he said as he fired a shot at the other one, as quickly retreated into the house. Years went by with no further incident after that. A new group of walking wolves would traverse the property. By the sign of tracks and sometimes a visual, but no interaction until one night when George, my grandfather, went to his son's room to check on him. There was that thing watching my dad sleep in the bed right across from the window. Anger overtook my grandfather as he rushed to the window. Them being only a foot apart, separated by glass, the thing smirked and walked off. The next encounter didn't happen until my dad was 3. My dad had an imaginary dog friend that he had been seeing for months, and it would always ask him to come out and play by certain gestures. My grandfather didn't think much of it until one day my dad says, "Doggy only comes at night," when it finally clicks in my grandfather's head. It's one of those walking wolves. So he called a couple of his friends and explained what was happening. They devised a plan to try to kill it. So they got a couple of bear traps, placing it outside of his son's window, blending into the shrubs. So night comes, his son is fast asleep. My grandfather carries my dad to the other side of the house with my grandmother and one of his friends as he heads back to the room with the lights out and the window open, him at an angle with his rifle pointing towards the window. His friend is in the shed 15 yards away from the window with his rifle pointed in the direction of the window. It showed up, but believed it was aware of the presence of his friend in the shed, so it approached the shed instead of being said. His friend screamed as it was trying to enter, and my grandfather went to the window and fired a shot. Ended up missing. Then it took off. The creature stopped coming around for a while. My dad grew up. In his teens, his dad told him the history of the property and what goes on, that he shouldn't go out at night. But like any other kid would think that he was telling him boogeyman stories to get him to come home early. So when his mom and dad would go to sleep, he would sneak out of the house and meet his friend at a lake a quarter of a mile from the house. So this one particular night he snuck out of the house and didn't make it 15 yards from the house. There was a figure standing by the tree, 50 feet from him. "Who's there?" my dad said. The creature stepped foot into the light, and everything his father told him started to flood his mind. He started to slowly backpedaling, as for every step he took the creature copied. As he got to his window, the walking wolf sped up. Diving into his room, he quickly shut and locked the window. The creature pressed its face upon the window, licking it from top to bottom. This left my dad traumatized. He didn't speak about it for weeks and didn't want to leave the house. Eventually, with the help of his dad, he was able to cope with it. It stopped coming around for years. He didn't have any more encounters until late in his adulthood, and early in mine, which, I believe, cost us dearly. Years went by, 20 years or so, no further encounter. Life was back to normal, my family, and then I came along. I had a normal childhood, growing up, no encounters with those walking wolves that my dad and grandfather told me about. However, at 6 or 7, I had an encounter with a woodsman, or as you call them, Bigfoot. I would play out in the front near the wood line, and it would watch me and make waving motions. I never felt threatened. I would say it came to be my friend. I would go into the woods and it would leave trinkets for me, and it kept the coyotes away from me. This went on for years into my young adulthood. I had no fear of the woods at all. I was friends with an 8-foot Bigfoot. The closest we ever got to each other was 10 feet. I was in my 20s at the time. My life took a change for the worst. I would spend hours in the woods, more than I would spend at home. One late summer afternoon, I was in the woods looking for my friend, and I couldn't find him, but I had this ominous feeling that I needed to head home. So I did. I had the feeling something was watching me, followed by light footsteps. So the naive me thought it was my friend, so I called out to him, going to where I heard the noise. 40 feet away from me was this dog crouching down in the bush, looking at me. Then it stood up. It stood at 7.5, maybe 8 feet tall,
long muzzle, dark brown, almost black fur, and sharp-looking teeth. I never felt the need to carry a weapon before, until then. Mind racing. Can I outrun it to my house 300 yards away? Then it points at me with those creepy finger claw-looking things. 3 more came out and had me completely surrounded. I'm scared out of my wits. I put my hands up, like fighting this thing was an option. Then a glance of something bulldozing its way through the forest, and came a mighty roar, like it came from King Kong itself. I never heard anything like that before. It literally brought me to my knees and paralyzed with fear. It was my friend, pissed off. I never saw him that way. He looked demonic. Don't know if I really gave a good description. He was 8.5 feet tall. I know this because he stood next to a tree and I measured it later. Anyway, 550 to 600 pounds, all muscle from shoulder to shoulder, 4.5 feet. Thickness from chest to back, 2 to 3 feet. Red, shaggy hair. No neck, traps looking like pyramids. He got between me and them. We were 2 feet apart as he shoves me to leave. As I take off running, one of the smaller Dogman creatures, 6 foot or so in height, proceeds to give chase, launching itself 8 feet in the air faster than anything known to man in my direction, passing the Bigfoot as he turns and grabs it by its back legs in midair, slamming it so hard to the ground that the ground shook, and stomping on its head, killing it instantly. I proceeded to run again as I was starting to lose sight of them. All 3 were on top of him. Making it to my house, telling my dad everything that had transpired, he calls my grandfather, telling him what had happened. He saw the Bigfoot on many occasions, and they had a mutual respect for each other. My grandfather felt it only right to help him since it had saved his grandson. He went to the location that I had given him, finding the walking wolves and the woodsman, down to 2 wolves. Attacking, the second one was missing its bottom jaw. The woodsman bleeding from its neck, shoulder, and stomach, losing strength and dropped to a knee, as my grandfather took a shot from his AR, hitting both creatures as they retreated yelping. He didn't go near the Bigfoot because it was severely injured, and it might attack, so stayed with it for a couple of hours, making sure the wolves didn't come back, and it recovered some of its stamina, then stumbled off. Later that week, my grandmother found my grandfather mauled to death in the barn. Authorities came saying it was a cat of some sort. Fish and Wildlife came, and some other alphabet agencies came and were on the property for a couple of days. We mourned the death of my grandfather, oblivious to everything else going on around us and what was going on the property. We believe it was one of the ones that my grandfather had shot at. I didn't have any friends at that time other than the woodsman that could possibly died from his wounds. So my dad got a bunch of his friends who were hunters to go kill the supposed cougar or mountain lion. They went into the woods tracking a predator. They found signs of heavy gunfire and chaos that went on for a quarter of a mile. Blood splatter all over the area. This unnerved them all, and they quickly abandoned their objective, not knowing whether those walking wolves were dead or alive. Made us feel robbed, never able to get closure. This happened in 2000, 2001. If William has any insight on that, it may give my family closure. I never saw the woodsman that saved my life again. Before I get into the last of the encounters from you, Luke, this is what William sent me and I sent to you. I'm going to share it for closure. Luke, let me first off by saying I am sorry for your family's loss. Then on to your remarkable family history with these beings. I think I know what it's like having a special friend, even though mine doesn't get to roam free as yours did. Let me start off by saying we received a call from the Game Warden Service in Mississippi, and myself and 2 other agents came to the area. We got there the day after they removed your grandfather from the barn, and we traveled to view his body. After this, we returned to the area and were dropped off by the sheriff's officer. Entered into the pines after traveling maybe 3/4 of a mile. I located a large male Bigfoot, badly injured but still alive. I approached and spoke to him in a calming voice and asked if he needed help, and that myself and my friends were here to help if he wanted. I finally got enough courage to move close to him to be able to touch him and asked to look at his wounds. His neck and his stomach were the 2 worst places. So we went dark and tranquilized him so we could transport him back to Virginia to our doctors. That same night, about a mile beyond that spot, we intercepted 8 Dogman, and we killed them all and flew them back to Virginia. All of them were wild, and only one had a different bullet hole in its chest. After being in the doctor's side of the building for about 5 weeks, once again we tranquilized the Bigfoot and carried him to Hawk Mountain, or close to 3 Forks in northern Georgia mountains, and turned him loose. On to the rest of the Taylor, Mississippi. First of all, let me start off by saying since we lost my grandfather, we didn't have any more encounters with the walking wolves. We heard howls and knew they passed through the property but never came to our home. Me and my father would walk our property every month armed just to make sure there was no disturbance or people that weren't supposed to be there. So we take a couple of ATVs and traverse the property early in the afternoon, no incident or anything of the nature. So as we got ready to turn back, I noticed a path at the end of the property that goes down. Never noticed it before, so I went to see where it led. And about 10 yards down, there's a hole in the ground, and an angle 4 feet in circumference. As I got close to it, it smells like death. Shining my light down, it goes deep, and at the entrance were deer bones and other animals. I started hearing breathing, as if something was sleeping in it. Then the wind changed direction, I guess carrying my scent into this den, so the breathing stopped. It turned into a light growl. Once we heard that, we hightailed it out of there. Later that evening, I went to my dad's house, and we were discussing what it was. And we realized it was like a rest stop for the walking wolves that traversed the property. Then we hear this blood-curdling howl, growl, woman scream mixture. My dad was like, I think it's pissed that we were in its home. No, Dad, it's not pissed at you. You were a good distance away. It's pissed at me. My scent is all over its den. So I went home and didn't go out for a while because of that to see if the thing would let go and realize it was one-time thing. So as a precautionary measure, I sent my wife and our 12-year-old to her sister's house for a week. So a couple of days go by as I think whatever it was in the den forgot about the misunderstanding, as I didn't go back over there, but it didn't. It tracked me to my house and was watching me and knew I was alone. I wasn't going to bring my dad into this and have something happen to him. I wouldn't be able to get over it as I felt I was the cause of my grandfather's death 20+ years ago. So I usually keep my .45 in a fingerprint safe next to the bed, but I decided to sleep with it under my pillow with a hunting knife as well. My instincts served me well. That night I was in a deep sleep and my body was trembling like I was in imminent danger. Moonlight shining in my room, I slowly opened my eyes to a wolf in my bedroom, Jeff. It got into my house and found me in my bedroom. My God, I couldn't spring up. It would have gotten me instantly. I prayed and prayed hard. As I swung my hand with everything I had to be fast enough to get the shots off. As it pounced, I fired, trying to scramble out of the room as it grabbed me and threw me into the wall so hard that my body left an imprint. Disoriented and slowly losing consciousness, I fired again, hitting it in the chest. It stopped briefly for me to make it into my bathroom, barricading myself and knowing that it'll be here in less than a minute. My left shoulder was bleeding and possibly dislocated. I wasn't able to use my SOCOM, which was at the side of my bed, so I abandoned that idea as the wolf started chipping away at the door. I had maybe 6 rounds left of backup mag in the nightstand drawer. I knew I wasn't making it out of the bathroom alive. I fired 2 shots as it was trying to come in. I heard an AR going off through the missing parts of the door. I fired the remaining bullets as the wolf retreated through the front door. It wasn't a 30-minute standoff between me and the walking wolf. It only lasted about 6 or 7 minutes, but it felt like time had slowed down. My dad's house was about 2 minutes away by ATV, so he heard a few shots go off from the direction of my house. Hopped out of bed, grabbed his AR in boxers and all, and got onto the ATV and made it to my house in 2 minutes. As he got there, he saw that everything seemed fine, so he circled to the back and saw that the door was open and that the door handle was twisted so hard that the mechanicalism was broken. Then he proceeded in with caution. Then he heard gunfire coming from my room. He quickly came up the stairs halfway, seeing the wolf making light work of the bathroom door. He put 6 shots in the creature's back. Then me fired as well, causing it to flee. I was rushed to the emergency room. Had I told them that I heard a noise outside of my house and went to see and got attacked by a big cat. Ended up getting rabies shots and a couple other. They cleaned everything up, 4 gashes, and the 5th one space apart where it had grabbed me, about 10 inches in length, and said that they weren't going to close it due to infection reasons. After that, we went to my dad's house and examined my house in the morning. Blood all in my bedroom, leading out the blood outside, a dark red burgundy color. So my dad and a few of his friends helped clean and fix the door, reinforcing them. After all that was done, me and my dad decided to sell due to the fact that our home is no longer safe. Jeff, if my dad was a deep sleeper or lived a few minutes further, I would have been dead, no questions about it. I sleep with the lights on now. If you have any other questions, I'll be glad to answer. I survived Dogman, but next time I might not be so lucky. This is why I'm leaving that property behind. Luke, my friend, I want to thank you very much for sharing your family's history of experiences with the walking wolves with us. I truly appreciate it. I cannot blame you for now moving to the city. I honestly don't think you're safe there at all. Your family seems to, like you said, a den for the traversing, traveling wolves. Like William said multiple times, they're very nomadic and for some reason like to stop on your property. Very sorry for your loss. Your whole family has felt, and all of your experiences. Once again, thank you for allowing me to share your family's history with the walking wolves. May the Great Spirit watch over you and guide you into your future. Thank you, Luke. Let's get into some Q&A with William before I have to stop this upload and record a couple more for while I will be out of commission for a couple of days. RM, it sounds to me like you had a run with the Dogman. They are very dangerous and can hide almost in an intense way, so make sure to watch your back at all times. And the sides, as most of the time, unless forced, they will not come at you head on. Michelle, you need to keep your doors shut and stay inside if you are hearing it make words or trying to make words. Then you are probably dealing with a wild werewolf. And with the measurements that you are giving, he will stand well over 10 feet tall. I am in Folk, Arkansas, again right now. If you want me to come into your area, let Jeff know ASAP, and he will let me know. I need to know your name, address, town, and zip. Debbie J. statement. Lately, I started looking into cryptids because of an incident I had back in '76. I was driving in the middle of nowhere, Granite, in southwest Oklahoma. It was late on a clear-lit night. Something huge, black, with no tail, on all fours, crossed crazy fast in front of me on a highway. I was terrified and cried all the way home to Altus. There are no bear or anything else that big and fast in the flat plains of southwest Oklahoma. Again, it was huge. Even after all these years, I can still remember it as if it was last night. Always wanted to know what it was, so now I may have some clues. Well, Debbie, things like this can scare people to death, especially the ones who don't believe in that to start with. And then you see one which is supposed to be fantasy, and you see it living and breathing, it will change your whole world. It will make you want to stay inside, just that much more, and you, Debbie, had stated already you were scared of the dark. Makes it just that much harder on you to deal with something like this. I can tell you what will help you if you are willing to try it. Wait until it's good and dark. Walk outside your front door, leaving your front door open. Go 10 steps outside that door and stand there for 10 minutes and walk back in. After about 3 days, do this again, but go 15 feet and stay there 15 minutes and continue until you reach 25 feet with your front door open and standing there for 25 minutes. This will get you so you can go around your home at night and you will not be scared, and it will actually work. Sean Williams asks, I've heard many encounters from people who have come across werewolf and dogman in cars on the road. They have walked up to the cars and tried to open the doors. How do they know how to do this? I have heard the same for doorknobs. They test them to see if they are open. Also, knowing how strong they are, they could easily get into your car. Why, when the doors are locked, do they just walk away? Also, does Sebastian interact with any other dogman or werewolves in the facility besides the females that are let in? Can he hear the other creatures that are in the facility? Answers. They have seen people do this and are following what they are seeing. They learn any way they can, and lots of times this is one of the many ways that they learn. This is also true with doorknobs. They have seen humans turn doorknobs, and they, in turn, try to turn them to gain entrance to your home if your door is not locked. They can be deterred quite easy, as long as you are not jumping around and carrying on like a fool in the car. No, if he was put in with another dogman, it would be a fight to the death. Also, if he was to be put in with another werewolf, it would be the same thing. Now it would be kill or be killed situation at this point, and time, especially in the enclosures. Yes, their voices carry so far there is no place in the underground enclosures that I can put him where he would not be able to hear the others' voices or the dogman howls any time. J.L. Soto asks, William, how do presidents react when told of the big three, or are not all of them told? Example, President Obama. What was Mr. Trump's reaction? Do they approve? Do some try to stop the project? Answer: they are told when we go over their secret military combat strategies. And since I've been handling this, I have never seen a negative reaction out of any of them whatsoever. Only one that I can remember has asked to see them, and that was the older George Bush. And he didn't even think they were that scary to him. President Obama didn't have much of a reaction to them whatsoever. President Trump could see what a good defense system they would be if ever needed on American soil to save thousands of American lives. He is like every other general that I could not be done mechanically, that it would have to be done by a mass invasion of foot soldiers. This is another speculation into the death of John F. Kennedy in '63. They were planning for his foot invasion then. Every president since President Reagan has approved and upped our budget each year, especially for personal, and our CO hurt us in the area, but I believe we may get to add more manpower than we have ever had before, is my prayer. No president has ever tried to stop this program since it was started way back in '52. 76 Legend asks, what video is the man speaking about dealing with the Navy base in Beaufort, South Carolina? Answer: it shows tanks with captured mermaids in them, and I am not sure where to find the answer to your question. Susie Lady asks, question: I asked this before with no response. I saw Dogman in the '70s as a kid in Cyprus. Can William tell me if he or his father have heard of reports coming out of there at all? I've only heard one other report at around the same time, but different locations on the island. Any information would be appreciated. I have lived with this encounter for 50 years, so, as you can imagine, I would be grateful to hear something if possible. Answer: Susie, I went through my files and then went through my dad's files and only saw where we received one phone call in October of '75 from Cyprus, and what was described to my dad was a werewolf of large proportions and a very black color. Said it moved as if it was floating across the land at a high rate of speed, and no person could have kept up with it, nor any tracking dog in a chase could have. And this is all I found in our records, so I will dig a little deeper and see if anything else pops up under anyone else's files, and I will post it to you if I find something later. Bill. Susan Robinson asks, I have a question for William. Is he working on that case of the 13-year-old boy that was killed in Kentucky? My cut-in. Listen to the previous uploads. Answer from William: yes, Susan, that was my case myself, and another agent worked that case, and 4 days later I killed the werewolf that was responsible for the child's death, and flew it back to Virginia to hear the whole story. It's one of the first 3 or 4 that was posted. It is included in one of them uploads. Wolfka asks, William, after taking out the caveman clan in North Carolina, after they were examined, were they identified as humans or relics of our past? How often have you had to respond to these types of reports? And has your team ever had to respond to reports of giants? Were you guys able to have the promotion ceremony and proper wedding down? William, you mentioned getting a new 9'2" werewolf male. Is he going to be introduced to the breeding program? If so, did he come willingly or had to be encouraged? Is he the largest werewolf you know of? Being a foot taller than Sebastian, what is his estimated weight? Will those two males ever meet or even know the existence of each other? And has he spoken to you? Is Sebastian aware that most of the human society knows nothing of his or their existence? William, regards to these other odd cryptids, Wendigo, Goatman, etc., do you guys ever bring these killed, captured creatures back to the lab and examine them? Answers. They were identified as members that belong to a group called Homo erectus, which is a lineage to us, but had a much thicker brow, and their body was thicker muscled and thicker with hair. I do believe, had we had to go hand to hand with the men, that we would have lost some men that day, especially the way the women fought. I'm glad I didn't have to go hand to hand with any of the men for sure. I have been on 3 separate hunts for giants, and it's always right on the Canadian border. And once I reach the line, I call off the hunt. I will not proceed into Canada, hunt down something that is in the United States, and then flees into the wilderness of Canadian refuge. The ceremony took place at 0400 hours. No one presented myself with 2 other generals and a couple of full birds and no wedding. That was it. I then had to fly to Santa Cruz, California straight away to start to handle a problem area. I don't know if he will be the next new breeding stock male or not. He is not very friendly. It will take some doing for me to be able to take him outside of his enclosure, or he may not be able to be treated like Sebastian is treated. He had to be darted and put to sleep completely to be brought in, along with 4 others like him from different areas in the country. I say he will be the next on account of his size. I say this: none of the others come close to his size. He is the largest one that I know of to date. Agent Tony Books talks about a 10-footer in the northwest corner of Georgia, but we were never able to track him down. I would guess him to weigh close to 650 to 725 pounds, but we have not had him on a set of scales yet, so don't hold me to that, okay? No, if we can keep them apart, we will never let them meet and greet, and also never want them to be able to speak to one another openly. Yes, he has, and none of it has been friendly, only how he would like to get me inside the enclosure and rip me to pieces. And I told him that we are somehow going to have to work our way past these feelings and get on better terms between him and I, and to remember that when I enter his enclosure, I'm coming as his friend, but that I will be also armed, and I surely know how to kill him with 1 shot. Yes, and he says that this is a good thing that no one knows of their existence in this world, and I've explained how I have control over 48,000 male werewolves, and he explained as long as I have that power, that the world is not in danger. But what happens when I remove myself from my position? What happens then? Who will have control then? Will they be a good guy or a bad guy? Said to make sure of who I put in charge under me also. Everything we kill has to be picked up and brought back to Virginia to be properly identified and labeled, and pictures taken, and then it will be properly disposed of in a furnace until nothing is left but ashes.
Alright folks, I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives people like you and I a place and a chance to share our experiences just judgment free. just treated with the respect we all deserve. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.